She stood by the altar, prepared to wed the man she believed she understouldn't. He embarrassed her publicly, and her godmother, a highly decorated army officer, emerged from the guests. What followed left the whole wedding speechless. Ever. Witnessed a second shift from flawless to crushing in less than a blink. Yeah, this was one of those afternoons. It was a Saturday in early May, warm yet comfortable, the sort of weather folks in Chesapeake Beach. Maryland, hope for when wedding season rolls around. The sunlight slipped through rows of glowing string lights and blooming pear trees. Every detail of that backyard wedding screamed class: the vintage chairs, the harpist softly playing in the background, the floral arch likely worth more than a month's rent in D.C. Danielle. Brooke stood by the altar, stunning, not merely in the typical bridal sense. There was something about her posture, her poised, composed presence, that made people fall silent as she passed. She wasn't flashy, just self-assured, the kind of woman who didn't have to raise her voice to control a room. Her dress was simple, form-fitting with delicate beading over the shoulders. Her hair swept into a royal twist, revealing a faint tattoo behind her left ear, a tiny ink barely visible unless you knew precisely where to look. Her 6 bridesmaids were arranged behind her, dressed in a deep terracotta shade that made the whole event feel grounded, not overdone. It's just hers. Her mother, wearing a navy gown with matching earrings, was already dabbing at her eyes. Cousins from Columbus were live streaming the whole thing for the aunties back home. Her old college friend Leah leaned toward the person beside her and whispered, "I swear Danielle looks like royalty." Everyone was there. Everyone, except one person, Angela Freeman. Danielle's godmother hadn't appeared, U.S. Army colonel, stationed in Germany. Word was, she couldn't make it. Folks assumed it was something official deployment. Orders no one really knew. But it stung. Danielle never mentioned it, but you could see it in her face. She missed her then. There was the groom, Matthew Ellison. Tall, clean-cut, sharp blue suit, crisp enough to slice paper. His family came from deep roots, politics, real estate, old Maryland wealth. The Whitman side arrived in silk ties and stiff expressions, sipping cucumber water and politely observing. The mixed crowd, they weren't outright rude, just cool, distant. Matthew had charmed, the kind that plays well at galas but up close. It sometimes felt rehearsed, like his words were practiced in the mirror. Still, Danielle loved him more, at least, believed she did. They'd met at a policy roundtable in D.C. 3 years earlier. He was the guy who stayed after to help clean up, cracking jokes, fishing for her number. She'd said no at first. Then, maybe then yes. Gradually, he won her over. He always told her he liked that she challenged him, called her fire with brains. And now, here they stood. The harpist paused. The officiant gave a nod. The crowd quieted. Chairs shifted. Phones raised to capture the moment. It was time for vows. But Matthew lifted a hand. "Actually, before we do that," he said, turning to the guests, microphone in hand. People smiled faintly. A few clapped. Danielle tilted, slightly uncertain, but still smiling. This was unscripted. The officiant looked puzzled. Her father leaned forward. Matthew cleared his throat. "I didn't plan this part," he began, "but I figured. Why not just speak from the heart?" The crowd leaned in. One of his groomsmen smirked. Someone's champagne glass chimed softly. "Marrying Danielle is the boldest thing I've ever done," he said, chuckling. That's when the atmosphere shifted. Hard to describe, but everyone sensed it. Matthew wasn't finished, not by a long shot. And what happened next would turn the whole ceremony upside down. At first, folks thought maybe he was just anxious. Public speaking isn't easy. Weddings bring pressure. But then, he kept going. "Let's be real," Matthew said, gripping the microphone. Tighter, Danielle is. Tense. Some laughs, mostly from his side of the aisle. His best man chuckled low, eyebrows raised like "here it comes." Danielle stood unmoving. Smile frozen. Her hand, which had rested lightly against her bouquet, drifted to her side. She's the kind of woman who will argue over a dinner bill. Correct your grammar mid-sentence and, heaven help you if you explain something she already knows, he went on. A few polite chuckles. Some exchanged glances. He wasn't delivering a love note. He was roasting her, don't get me wrong, he added, adjusting his collar. I admire that, her strength. Her fire, but it's not always simple. Let's just say introducing her to my parents. Yeah, that came with RESISTANCEA, snort from his table. Danielle's mother in the front row narrowed her eyes. Her aunt shook her head slowly, lips pressed tight, the air thinned. Yeah, my mom. Needed some time to, adjust to the energy, Matthew continued. Danielle isn't exactly traditional. She's not going to sit quietly and nod along. She doesn't bake cookies or giggle at your dad's bad jokes. No fake smiles, no silence. Matthew laughed awkwardly, still waiting for the room to laugh along. A few guests offered weak, confused applause. Someone cleared their throat. All I'm saying is, he pressed on. She's different, strong-willed, unfiltered, and hey, I'm here for it. I'm still here, right? He turned to her, offering a lopsided grin as if being clever. Danielle didn't. Return it. Her eyes glossy now swept the crowd. Her cousin stopped filming. Her college roommate looked mortified. Her father shifted slightly in his chair. Her jaw tightened only a little, but enough for the nearby guests to notice. Matthew glanced at her. Microphone still raised. Babe, he asked, you all right? She stared at him, saying nothing. Not yet, she finally replied. A low murmur rippled from the back of the crowd. Heads started to turn. Someone had just entered, walking calmly down the center aisle from the garden path. The way she moved, unhurried, steady, carried a quiet control you rarely see. It was like time flowed differently for her than for the rest of us. Danielle spotted her first, her eyes locked onto the approaching figure, and for the first time since the awkward toast began, her expression changed. It wasn't relief, it was deeper, recognition, disbelief even. Angela Freeman, full uniform, full posture, Colonel. Freeman stood tall, nearly 6 feet. No makeup, no jewelry. Just the sharp, dark green military dress uniform, lined with pins and stripes that radiated authority. Not a strand of her short, neatly cropped hair was out of place. Her face, solid as stone. The whispers caught fire. Some guests stood up for a better look. Others leaned in, whispering, "Is that her godmother? She's really military?" Heard she came back from Germany. Matthew, still facing Danielle, hadn't noticed. He gave a nervous chuckle. What? He asked. I thought I was being honest. Isn't that what everyone says? Honesty's important for marriage, right? But Danielle wasn't looking at him anymore. The entire room's attention had shifted. All eyes were on the Colonel. Angela didn't rush. She didn't frown. She didn't hesitate. Her stride remained, steady as she made her way down the stone path toward the altar. Her boots silent but firm. That's when Matthew finally sensed the change in energy. Mid-joke, he turned and froze. She stood barely 10 feet behind him, back straight. Eyes locked onto his. Matthew stumbled half a step back, the microphone lowering slightly. Colonel Freeman, he managed, uncertain. She said nothing. Her stare didn't waver, like she'd seen the whole thing unfold but hadn't needed to say a word yet. The air in the room tightened, not dramatic, not exaggerated. It's just still. The kind of stillness when everyone realizes they're witnessing a moment they won't forget. Colonel Angela Freeman didn't flinch. She stood motionless, arms resting behind her back in perfect military stance. Her presence alone drowned out anything Matthew had uttered with that microphone. Danielle took a small step forward. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her face spoke volumes. The weight of every childhood memory, every missed birthday, every letter Angela sent from overseas, it all showed in her eyes. Matthew cleared his throat, chuckling awkwardly. Wow, didn't know you were flying. In big surprise, he tried to joke, gripping the microphone tighter, betraying his nerves. Angela's eyes never shifted. She moved forward, measured and slow, stopping just a few feet from him. Up close, the lines on her face told their own story, not lines of age, but of endurance, of war zones, of loss, of command. She had seen more in conflict zones than Matthew ever would in boardrooms. "You've always been a talker, Angela," stated voice calm but firm, filling silence with your words. "I see nothing's changed." A quiet ripple of laughter spread, not mocking, just knowing. Honest. Matthew blinked, forcing a weak smile. "Look, maybe you misunderstood." Angela cut him off. "I heard you, loud and clear." She paused, letting the silence stretch. So did everyone else. Angela's eyes swept across the guests. "I don't care if you flew in from DC or Dayton. Whether you're wearing $1,000 shoes or Sunday heels, if you sit here watching a man tear down a woman he claims to love in front of her family, you're not a guest. You're a witness." Danielle swallowed hard. Her hands trembled, but not from fear. She wasn't alone now. Angela turned her gaze back to Matthew. "Let me explain something, son," she said. Her words hit sharper than a slap. "Danielle, Brooks isn't your punchline. She's not your exception. Not some edgy story to tell your coworkers after a few drinks." Matthew opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Angela stepped forward again. "This woman," she continued, "was raised by fighters. She comes from generations of women who worked 2 jobs and still braided their daughters' hair on Saturday mornings. Women who buried their husbands and still stood in line to vote the next day. Women who never had to raise their voices to earn respect." The room stirred, heads nodded. Some guests began to clap softly at first, then louder, you think. "Standing up here, rambling off script, makes you brave?" Angela asked. "No. Brave is Danielle waking up every day in a world telling her to shrink and choosing to rise instead." The applause grew. Danielle looked down, blinking away tears. Mother covered her mouth, trying to steady herself. One of the bridesmaids whispered, "Amen." Angela's tone softened. "She doesn't need saving. She needs respect." Matthew glanced around. He looked overwhelmed, unsure, embarrassed, still trying to defend himself. "Look, I was just being real. I joke when I'm nervous. I didn't mean anything by it." Angela raised an eyebrow, the kind only a colonel could if disrespect is your default under pressure. "My advice? Stay single." She let that sentence settle over the room. Danielle inhaled deeply, her heart pounding. All the quiet warning signs, the side comments, the cutting jokes, disguised as humor, they flooded back to her. Angela looked at Danielle, a small, subtle nod. It wasn't for show, it was a connection, a steady hand on her shoulder without even touching her. Matthew stepped back. His eyes flicked between Danielle and the colonel. Then he looked at the crowd for. Once, words failed him. But this wasn't over, because the next voice didn't belong to Angela. It was Danielle's, and no one, especially Matthew, was ready for what she was about to say. Danielle fixed her eyes on Matthew, blinking, no flinching, just a steady, unwavering stare, like she was truly seeing him for the first time ever. She stepped toward Himslow, composed, not a hint of drama in her movements. Her bouquet now dangled loosely by her side, the petals brushing softly against her dress. She didn't need cue cards. She didn't need a microphone. 3 years, she began. 3 years, and you still can't tell the difference between teasing someone and tearing them down. Matthew's face froze, stunned. He tried to muster a smile, weak, twitchy one that silently begged for forgiveness. "Babe, I don't babe me," she cut him off sharply. "Not after that." The crowd collectively held its breath. Some of her friends covered their mouths. Her aunt whispered, "Lord, have mercy," under her breath. Danielle's gaze swept across the audience, her eyes moving slowly from face to face. "This was supposed to be about us," she continued. "About love, about 2 people building something real. But instead, you used your time this moment to turn me into a character in your little joke." Matthew's eyes darted nervously toward his side of the room, searching for support. His father sat rigid. His mother crossed her arms and looked away. Even his best man stared silently at the floor. "I've fought for this relationship, Danielle. Pressed on. I've made room for your flaws, your learning curve, your excuses. I kept telling myself, he's just awkward. He didn't grow up like me. I walked you through tough conversations with my family, explained why your jokes weren't funny, defended you when my friends raised concerns." Her eyes glistened now as they locked onto his. I carried this relationship, and the one day I was supposed to be honored, you made me feel small. Matthew opened his mouth again, fumbling for words. I didn't mean. It was nerves, Danielle. I swear nerves don't make people show a new side of themselves, she snapped. They reveal what's already been there all along. Another ripple moved through the crowd. Some nodded. Others sat frozen, watching the slow unraveling of something that was never truly whole. Angela stayed off to the side, arms still folded behind her back, silent now. She didn't need to intervene. Danielle had it under control. I've wasted enough time convincing you and myself that you'd grow into the man I deserve, Danielle said, voice steady. But now I see. You were never trying to grow. You were trying to make me shrink. The room fell completely silent. Danielle turned again, scanning the faces in front of her. This isn't a breakup speech, it's clarity. It's a woman refusing to step into a future she didn't design, not like. This, she paused, eyes dropping to the ring on her finger, delicate, elegant band with the stone she had chosen herself. Without hesitation, she slipped it off, held it in the air for a moment, then returned it to Matthew without ceremony. The microphone was still in his hand, but for once he had nothing left to say. Danielle turned back toward her bridesmaids. Her cousin quietly stepped forward, taking the bouquet from Danielle's hand. Her roommate offered a subtle, supportive nod. A slow, hesitant clap echoed from somewhere in the crowd. Others followed, not a roaring ovation, but steady, sincere. Matthew stepped back, his face flushed with humiliation, the ring still burning in his hand. Danielle turned to Angela. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice firm now. "Needed you more than I thought?" Angela's lips curled into the faintest smile. "You didn't need me to talk," she replied. "You just needed to remember your own voice." Danielle exhaled a real breath, the first of the day, and then she smiled. Not the forced kind. A quiet, earned smile, but the moment wasn't over. Now, the crowd had to absorb what had happened. Not everyone would walk away unchanged. Technically, the ceremony was still in progress. The atmosphere said otherwise. The harpist had quietly set her instrument down. The officiant hovered off to the side, wide-eyed, uncertain whether to speak or simply vanish. The floral arch now resembled the backdrop of history, rather than a symbol of romance. Danielle stepped off the small platform where she and Matthew had been standing. Each step felt weighted, but not in a bad way, like she was finally stepping out of something heavy she'd carried for years without even realizing it. Her heels sank into the soft grass. She didn't care. Her dress would stain. She didn't care about that either. The crowd parted naturally as she moved, expressions shifting from awe to discomfort to quiet admiration. She walked toward the back, no destination in mind, until her mother stood, stepping directly into her path. Without a word, her mother pulled her into an embrace. Danielle collapsed into her arms, resting her forehead on her mother's shoulder the same way she did as a little girl after a hard day at school. "You good, baby?" her mother whispered. Danielle nodded, eyes shut. "I am now." Mother kissed her cheek gently and squeezed her tight. "Walk proud, let him watch." And so Danielle did. She moved through the garden, past old friends, former co-workers, even Matthew's college roommate, who muttered something to his girlfriend, still piecing together what had just unraveled, the kind of man who'd retell the story later but conveniently forget how silent he'd been while his friend humiliated a woman in front of 100 people. Near the final row of chairs stood Angela. Her arms were finally resting naturally at her sides. Danielle walked toward her without hesitation. They didn't hug, not right away. They simply looked at one another. "You look good in uniform," Danielle remarked softly. Angela gave a low, amused grunt. "Hot as hell, though," she replied. She laughed, truly laughed, for the first time that entire day. "I didn't expect you to come," Angela gave a small nod. "I didn't think I'd make it, but something told me I had to." "You don't skip your child's wedding? Not if you can avoid it?" Danielle's eyes filled with tears again. She blinked fast, struggling to hold herself together. Asterisk, it means everything. Angela tilted her head slightly. "It means more that you stood up there." and chose yourself." They stood quietly for a second, the sound of the crowd still murmuring behind them. Few guests were already slipping away, some from Matthew's side sneaking out quietly, others still seated. Angela glanced toward the house. "You want to get out of here?" Danielle nodded, but her eyes drifted back toward the altar. One final look. Matthew hadn't moved. He stood exactly where she left him, still holding the mic, still holding the ring, his face pale, frozen, unsure if this was all a terrible dream or the kind of viral moment that explodes by Monday morning. He wasn't some movie villain, just a man who never realized how small his words were, till they echoed inside something sacred. Danielle turned back to Angela. "Yeah, let's go." Angela didn't grab her arm, didn't lead the way. She just walked beside her, equal pace, equal strength. As they passed the catering tent, one of the waiters, a kid no older than 19, muttered under his breath, "Respect." Danielle gave him a faint nod. By the time they reached the gravel path leading to the front gate, Danielle's friends had started collecting their things. Her bridesmaids followed at a distance, unsure whether to approach or give her space. The ceremony had turned into something none of them could have predicted, yet not a single one of them would have changed a thing. But the day wasn't over, because sometimes the most important conversations come after the storm has passed. The sun had dipped lower now, casting a soft golden light across the garden. But the warmth had long faded, replaced by unease. Drifted off in small groups, whispering as they walked. Some held on to their wedding favors awkwardly, not sure if they should keep them or toss them in the nearest trash can. Celebration ended before the cake was even cut. Inside the main house, staff quietly packed away untouched appetizers and champagne flutes. A woman from the venue whispered to her coworker, "Should we still serve dinner?" The answer came in a silent shrug. Out on the front porch, Danielle sat. On a wooden bench, her heels were off, her gown bunched around her ankles. The veil, so carefully pinned hours ago, now rested in her lap like a relic from another life. She stared out toward the gravel path, watching cars pull away one by one. Her face wasn't sad, just clear, lighter. Angela leaned casually against a porch column nearby, arms loosely crossed. She hadn't changed out of her work uniform, yet even now, in a space filled with lace and pastel roses, she looked like she belonged more than anyone else. "Regret it?" Angela asked. Danielle didn't turn her head, not even a little. Nodded once. Good. They sat quietly a moment. The crunch of tires over gravel, the wind brushing the trees. Faint footsteps. That was all. Danielle said after a long pause. "For so long I thought, if I didn't make this relationship work, I'd be proving all the wrong people right." Angela raised an eyebrow. "What people?" "It's the ones who said I was too picky, too independent, too much." She sighed. "So I compromised. A little. Here, a little there. Nothing huge. Just made myself quieter. Easier." She exhaled sharply. "I didn't even notice how much I was bending, until one day I couldn't recognize myself in the mirror." Angela pushed off from the column and sat beside her. Love doesn't require shrinking, and it sure as hell doesn't require erasing. Danielle gave a tired laugh, which I'd realized that sooner. Angela shook her head. "You realized it at the altar. That's pretty damn soon." Danielle smiled faintly, then looked at her godmother. "Have you always been this wise?" Angela smirked. "Takes a few decades, couple wars, and about 1,000 stupid men to get this sharp." Just then, Leah, Danielle's college roommate, came down the porch steps, carrying 2 bottled waters and a tote bag stuffed with makeup, safety pins, and backup flats. "I grabbed your things," she said softly. "Also, pretty sure Matthew's." Mom swung at the wedding planner. Danielle's eyebrow lifted. "Seriously, missed?" Planner ducked. It was, honestly, kinda impressive. Angela let out a real laugh, kind that came from deep in her chest. Leah handed Danielle a water. "You okay?" Danielle nodded. "Yeah, surprisingly I actually am." Leah leaned in and hugged her. "I'm proud. Of you." Not because of how it ended, but because you chose yourself in front of everyone. That takes guts. Danielle hugged her back. Thanks for staying always. As Leah disappeared back inside, Angela tapped Danielle gently on the shoulder. You know what you're doing tomorrow? No idea. Good, Angela grinned. That means you've got options. Danielle looked at her, thinking, you think people are going to judge me for walking out like that? Some will, Angela shrugged. And those people? They're not your people. Danielle nodded slowly. It all made sense now. The silence, the applause, even the heartbreak. None of it wasted. It was a wake-up call. And sometimes, clarity arrives right in the middle of the mess. She stood, smoothing her dress out of habit. You hungry, Angela? Grinned. Starving. Asterisk. They walked down the steps together, past the empty chairs and wilted centerpieces, past the crumpled programs. In scattered petals, the ceremony may have ended in chaos. But Danielle didn't feel broken. She felt free. But before this story ends, there's one last thing she wants you to know. A truth far too many people ignore, until it's almost too late. Later that night, Danielle sat cross-legged on her living room couch, still wearing the same dress. Her makeup smudged, but her eyes clear. The house sat in silence. No champagne, no music, only the soft whir of the ceiling fan overhead and the occasional whoosh of a car passing by outside. Her phone buzzed again and again with messages. Some were from people who had attended the wedding, others from those who had already caught wind of what happened. You. Okay, that was crazy. Never expected that. She read every message. Didn't feel the urgency to reply right away. Angela was fast asleep in the spare bedroom. Lights off, door left slightly ajar. Her suitcase rested in the hallway, the military tag still dangling from the handle. Danielle had offered to wash Angela's uniform, but Angela had simply waved her off, saying the uniform had seen worse. Finally, Danielle opened the voice memo app on her phone. Not for Instagram, not for anyone else. This was just for her. She hit record. You never really realize it while it's happening, she began, speaking softly into the stillness. How you start adjusting parts of yourself just so someone else can stay at ease. It's small things at first. Shifting how you talk. It's laughing along at jokes that don't land. Biting your tongue instead of correcting someone, just so you don't seem difficult or on edge. She paused for a long breath, letting the quiet stretch out. And then one day, there you are, at your own wedding, just listening to someone tell a packed room that your confidence is inconvenient, that your strength is problematic. She let the words settle. I nearly let it slide. Truly, I almost smiled through it all, because I didn't want to cause a scene. A faint smile touched her lips, though it held no humor. But scenes unfold, whether you speak up or stay quiet. The only difference is who's writing the script. Her voice stayed steady, even controlled. I don't regret walking away. What I do regret is waiting that long to remember who I am. She glanced down at her hands. Bare now, no ring, no bouquet, just her skin, solid, steady, her own. I hope someone hears this and stops doubting themselves. I hope they leave the space that makes them small, even if it's a space filled with applause. She reached for the phone and tapped stop. On the recording, the lesson wasn't complicated, but it was weighty and honest. Respect isn't something handed to you when someone feels generous. It's a boundary you define and defend. Love isn't supposed to make you question your worth, doesn't humiliate you, doesn't twist your qualities into flaws because they don't fit someone else's mold. Danielle didn't consider herself brave. Not that night, not even the morning after. But over time, she understood that courage isn't always loud. It's not always about shouting or fighting. Sometimes, simply choosing peace over performance. A week later, she sent an email to the wedding guests. No drama, no long explanations. Just a short note, thank you to those who showed up. With love and support, the wedding is no longer happening, but the future. It's still very much alive. And so am I. People would talk naturally. There would be quiet conversations in offices, speculation over brunch. Some would say she overreacted. Others would say she saved herself. But none of their opinions could change the truth. Danielle had chosen herself right there. Of everyone, the thing most people spend a lifetime trying to do quietly, behind closed doors, she did it in a wedding dress, carrying nothing but her name. And if you've ever been in a space where you made yourself smaller just to keep the peace, let this be your reminder. You owe comfort to no one who treats your worth like a footnote. You don't need anyone's permission to leave. Choose yourself, even if your voice trembles when you do. If this story struck something in you, take a moment. Ask yourself, where in your life are you shrinking? What would it look like to stand up instead? And if you know someone who needs this reminder, share it with them. We all deserve to be seen unapologetically.